Let me tell you, S corporations are probably the most popular tax strategies that I encounter all the time. Unfortunately, there are some individuals that set up that S corporation not fully understanding it and ends up costing them a lot of money. I'll go into all of that. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Jeanette Andrada. I'm a tax strategist licensed through the IRS, and I help therapists in private practice pay the least amount of taxes. So again, we're going to go over the S corporation. One of the things that I notice that a lot of my clients go through is that they're very worried, like they're not sure when they should make that switch to an S corporation. So that's why they come to me to get that information. They want to know if it's the right time, if they're actually going to be saving money, and also to take away that anxiety of, is this the right choice for me? Now, the reason that the S corporation status or election is a little bit challenging, it's not a decision that should be made lightly, is because you're going to end up with much bigger responsibilities for your business. You have more record keeping that you need to do, some more compliance, and you have to pay yourself a reasonable compensation. This is probably the most challenging part. Do you have enough cash flow to pay yourself as an employee of your business? So in this video, what I want to go over is a calculator that I created. You could download it absolutely free in my link in my the description or in my bio. Essentially, this spreadsheet is going to tell us what your anticipated tax savings are going to be if you make that switch to an S corporation, and if it's the right move for you to move forward. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. We're going to get started by looking at this tax saving calculator. This top portion right here just gives you a quick summary of what you're looking at. This green box is going to change depending if you're going to have any savings or not have any savings. So it's just a summary for you to look over very quickly. Now down here, what we want to do is update the yellow boxes. Everything else does not need to be touched. There are other formulas or they are numbers that do not change. So just make sure not to touch any of those. Let's go ahead and get started with this net profit and loss box, that's 65,000. The net profit and loss you will be able to find in your accounting system if you have financial reports. If you do not do your bookkeeping or you do not have your profit and loss, then it's a really great idea to start putting something together. Let's remember that the 65,000 is your bottom line number. So that means that it is not the cash that you brought in. You might have brought in 150,000, but after your business deductions, you only had a profit of 65,000. So that's the number we want to put in here, because you as a sole proprietor will be taxed on your profits of the business, not the income that you receive. The next place that we want to update is our reasonable compensation. As an S-Corp owner, you will become essentially an employee of the business, and you will need to pay yourself what they call a reasonable compensation. The next things we want to look at are your bookkeeping and your payroll costs, as well as your tax preparation costs. Now, your bookkeeping costs, you won't have payroll costs in this column as a sole proprietor because you don't pay yourself on payroll. So you would have your bookkeeping that you need to complete. Now, on average, bookkeeping is typically $350 per month. So I just did up here 350 times 12. You're more than welcome to overwrite the whole cell or just go into the formula and update this if you are, like, let's say you're not going to outsource your bookkeeping, then you could just do 0, right? The next thing is your tax preparation. Typically, you would hire what's called a Schedule C as a sole proprietor. So usually tax preparation costs for Schedule C and your individual tax return are anywhere between like $700 to like $1,100, just depending on the area, depending on the complexity. I just put 900 just to kind of give us, something in between. Yours might be completely different, which you could update here. Let's look at the S-Corp side. So I left it with the 350 also, times 12. And then I added the payroll cost, because remember, you're adding yourself to payroll, which means that I really recommend using something like Gusto or QuickBooks Payroll. I definitely don't recommend you trying to take that on on your own, it's payroll taxes are very complicated. So something like Gusto's around $50-ish a month. So you could start there, or like I said, QuickBooks, and the prices are pretty comparable. I don't recommend something like ADP as a startup because it is very expensive. So just look into Gusto and look into QuickBooks. The tax preparation is where it's going to get pretty pricey for you, because for S corporations, you're going to file what's called an 1120S. 1120Ss are complex, and they take a lot more time and a lot more knowledge to do S corporations. It's not something somebody could just pick up off the street and know what they're doing. There is a lot of training and education that a tax preparer and a tax professional have to undergo so that they could complete these corporate tax returns. So I definitely don't recommend you doing it on your own. Even if you think you know what you're doing, you probably don't, no offense. But go ahead and outsource that. Now, the S-Corp tax returns could also vary significantly there, depending on your area, depending on the complexity of the tax returns. So I would look into spending $1,800 to $2,500 for your S-Corp tax returns, just depending, again, on your area, your complexity. I would budget that out, and if you find somebody that could do it for less, that's great. But you could come in here if you have somebody and they could give you kind of an idea already what they would be charging you, then you could just update this amount and get a true ongoing cost for the S corporation. Let's go ahead and start going through scenarios to see when is the best time. And so you could see how the spreadsheet works. So once you have your profit and loss, let's go ahead and put this in here. Right now we have $65,000, and there's just, $1,100 worth of savings if we put you on a $40,000 salary. A lot of people come to me because they're completely new in their business. It's a startup private practice, and they're not sure if they should make that switch, right? So the way I look at it is you want to go ahead and think out, where are you going to be? What are your plans for the next, 5, 6, 7 months? And if you are just getting started and you have a part-time caseload, you're kind of taking it easy, just easing yourself into it, determine what you would have in profit. So like, let's say a part-time caseload is going to be $40,000 a year, but you have $5,000 as expenses, and I'm just using an example. But let's say you're going to be at $35,000. Now, it's not a good time, right? If you're gonna be making 40 or 35,000, then you should probably wait until your profits increase a little bit. Now, what I typically do is I start looking at like the $50,000-$60,000 range to start determining if that S-Corp election is correct or if it's right. So 60,000 is probably going to be good. Yeah, so you're going to save $470 that first year. It might honestly not be worth it because it's a big change, right? So it just depends if that $472 is worth it for you. $472 is still, money back in your pocket. So you can make that decision. So around 60,000, 50, 60,000 is where I start looking at it, because again, these ongoing costs are going to change. It's going to depend on your area, whoever does your taxes, right? So that number is going to change. Just to show you how impactful that S-Corp election is, let's say you are at a full-time caseload. You might have somebody working with you, you might have a group practice going on. Let's say your profits are $120,000 and you're still paying yourself that $40,000 salary. Now you've saved almost $9,000 by making that S-Corp switch. And remember, that's just year one, because year after year, you would have been paying X amount of dollars, right? Because you didn't make that S-Corp election. And look at the big difference here. Your total taxes were, it's like 10,000, almost 11,000 difference from, this. More profits you have, your admin costs shouldn't vary that much. Like, it shouldn't change that much, right? So let's do 150,000. And again, these numbers don't move, but these do. And now you've saved you're still at like $13,000 savings for the year, and $15,000 of it is going to be savings and taxes. So it could be very, very impactful. Because the S-Corp election should be done at a specific time, you want to make sure not to jump the gun and go ahead and just make that election because everybody says so. And you can't take it back. Just FYI, you cannot take back an S-Corp election or the S-Corp status. If you take it back, you won't be able to make that election again for 5 years. So that's very, very costly, especially if you're going to grow the business. You're going to grow your private practice in the next couple of years. You're going to want to make sure you have that option. The first place to start is download this spreadsheet. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a completely free spreadsheet, and you could go in, add your numbers, plug in your specific situation to help you decide, like, okay, maybe it is a good time. I have an upcoming course for S corporations, and in this course, it doesn't just go through this if it's a good time, but it also goes through how is a DIY, starting from determining if you should make that S-Corp election all the way up until you're approved for the election and you are on autopilot. That way your compliance is done, your S-Corp election is done correctly, everything is done correctly. So that's coming up. When you download my free spreadsheet, I will go ahead and send you an email when that course is released, so you could take a look at it and see if that's something that you want to do. I really, really appreciate you watching, especially if you got this far. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really, really helps my channel, and it helps me get out there for other therapists that really need this type of information. All right, so I will talk to you next time.